Welcome to the channel. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Now today's video is going to be a review on a dive watch by Rotary called the Super 7. Now if you recall, I did an unboxing not so long ago on this watch, and this watch was sent in by a subscriber by the name of Craig Rogers. So thank you, Craig, for sending your watches in. I'll be working through them. He sent in 3 watches, so there'll be 3 reviews coming up as per the unboxing that you saw. Now this is my first experience with Rotary, well, my first proper hands-on experience. Now looking at Rotary as a brand, as far as I can tell, they do have a Swiss made watch option, and they also have these Japanese made watch options as well, and they also do quartz watches. Now let's start off by looking at what the Rotary Super 7 is offering us in terms of specifications and dimensions. So you have a 316L stainless steel case, bezel, crown and case back. You also have a 120 click unidirectional diving bezel with an aluminium bezel insert with an illuminated pip at the 12 o'clock. You also get a sapphire crystal with this watch. You also have 300 meters of water resistance, and this watch runs a Miyota 8205, which is a Japanese automatic movement. The movement does hand wind, but it doesn't hack. It's got 21 joules and a beat rate of 21,600 vibrations per hour. The rated accuracy on this movement is -20 to +40 seconds, and it also has a day and date function. Let's move on to dimensions. You have a case diameter of 42 millimeters and a thickness of 14 millimeters. You've got a lug to lug of 47.5, and you also have a weight of 122 grams. Now at this point, I think it's important that we talk about the price of the watch. So the watch currently retails on Amazon for £199. It's also available on Watch Nation for £199, and it goes up to £250. That's because there's a couple of variations with this watch. You can have this watch with the silicone strap, as I'm showing you right now. You can also have it in the bracelet variant, and you can also have it with an upgraded ceramic bezel insert with the silicone and also with the bracelet, which then goes up to £250. Now I think we need to take a little pause here and just try and understand what I've just gone through, specifically the specifications and the price point. Now looking at Watch Nation, just doing a simple sort and filter, at the £200 price mark, the only other watch that touches it is the Seiko 5, the Seiko 5 Sports to be exact. Now that is pretty significant, considering Rotary have now just given us this entry level, very good value for money dive watch. Now the nearest Seiko diver, entry level diver, is at £350 to £400. So this watch is already coming in way cheaper than Seiko. It's beating its equivalent watches in this price class, and it's also punching above its weight and also beating entry-level Seiko divers just on specifications and of course water resistance. So just on that alone, they've set themselves up in a very, very strong position. Now let's go further and start looking at the smaller details of the watch. Now when looking at the dial, we're presented with a really, really nice shade of green, and you can see a mix of printed and applied features on the dial. You've got applied hour markers, you've got baton and circular indices with polished edges, you've got a dual baton at the 12 o'clock, and you've got a baton at the 6 and at the 9. You also have a framed, applied, polished date window, and the printed text underneath the 12 o'clock, Rotary Super 7 at the 6, scuba 300 meters, 1000 foot automatic, and at the bottom, British design. You've got a really nice green chapter ring that goes around the dial with printed minute markers, and you've got these gorgeous plunger style dive hands with that orange outline around the hour hand. You also have a bit of dual lume action going on the watch. You've got C3 on the hour hand and the seconds hand, along with the hour markers on the dial, but you've got BGW9 on the long minute hand and the pip at the 12 o'clock. The lume, I'd say, is reasonably good. I think it's C3. It's been applied really well. I don't see that it's very, very bright, and I haven't flashed it with any UV light. I've just used the LED lights within this room. Longevity should be okay. It's not going to be the best, and of course the brightness, as you can tell, it will not be the best, but I think it is more than sufficient. Now the bezel insert, as mentioned, it is aluminium with white printed markers going up in increments of 1 minute to the 20-minute mark. with a pip at 12 o'clock. The bezel itself is a sloped, slightly tall stainless steel bezel with very good machining. Now let's look at the feel of the actual bezel. Now the rotation is quite firm. You have to apply a bit of pressure. It is quite precise in terms of the way it clicks. I don't mind the sound too much. In terms of alignment, it isn't perfect. There's a very small touch of playback, but other than that, I think it is a very reasonable bezel. It's not the best and it's not the worst. It is somewhere in between and something you can't really moan too much about. There's also no air coating on the sapphire glass, so that shouldn't really interfere with the green dial. Now at this point, I want to talk about the Miyota movement that Rotary have opted to use. Now the movement itself, I think it is pretty dated. As I mentioned, it's a 21 joule movement. It's got a rated accuracy of -20 to +40, which is the exact same accuracy rating of a Seiko Epson NH35. Now it also doesn't hack. Now hacking is non-essential. The accuracy is there. At least it has hand winding, which is a big bonus. And the only thing with the Miyota is a lot of people do complain that it does make a slight rotor noise because the rotor isn't bi-directional, it only spins one way. Now the other issue with the Miyota is you do have an undesired indirect drive design. What that basically means is if you shake the watch vigorously, the second hand will stop. But it'll catch back up and actually has zero effect on the actual accuracy. The second thing with this indirect drive design is what you can also get is a seconds hand judder, or where the second hand appears to just skip like seconds at a time, which is not present on this one, but I have seen it on others. The crown function is very smooth. It does screw in and pops out as it needs to. You do have a date function. Now what I will say about the date function, when you are going through the timings, it is a little bit more snappy than the NH35. I think the NH35 feels slightly more refined when you do change the day and date function. I think the movement they've used is slightly dated, and I would have preferred if they went for the Seiko Epson NH35. Now the case finishing is pretty basic and simple. You've got linear brushing on the A face, on the lugs, and you've got highly polished sides. Now that transitions also into the case back, which is brushed. You've got a signed crown with S7 on the crown, again highly polished. You've got brushing across the crown guards and polishing on the tips. The case back is actually quite nice on this watch. You've got Super 7 engraved on the back. You've got your specifications engraved around the outer ring, which is also polished, and you've got screw down case back. Moving on to the silicone bracelet, it is very soft and supple. It's a dive style silicone bracelet. You've got signage on the keeps. You've got brushing on the buckle with Super 7 signed also on the buckle. So what does it weigh like on the wrist? Now let me apologize if you can hear any feedback to the mic. I seem to get feedback when I connect it to my stand. So yeah, so I'm wearing the Seiko Kinetic BFK. It ran out of juice, so I had to take it for a walk. So here we have the Rotary Super 7 on the wrist. My wrist is 6.5 inches, and you know what, the watch, it is quite a bulky, thick watch. Not in terms of dimensions, like the lug width, like the lug length and the case diameter, more so in terms of thickness, and that's by this very high-rise bezel. But on the wrist, it doesn't feel so much. The weight's only around 140 grams. And the strap is actually quite comfortable. You know, the alternative Seiko style dive strap I don't really like, although the new ones are much more improved. They're a lot softer. And the one that I supplied on, it's actually okay. It doesn't look horrible. It doesn't stick out over your wrist or anything. I've actually got it on the smallest hole. So you've got ample size. It should fit a lot bigger wrists. And you know what? The proportions are good. It does fit in, and I do like that green color and how it looks just on the wrist. Very sporty watch overall. Now time to give you guys an overview, what I like and what I don't like. Let's start off with the dislikes. Now one of them being, I think there's a slight alignment issue, so it's slightly QC related. Now I don't know if it's just me, but if I hold the watch dead straight, that 12 o'clock hour marker and that chapter ring, it sits slightly turned towards the left, just very slightly, because that bezel between the lugs looks central to me. It could be my eyes, but I think to me the way it looks, it does look like it's just slightly off kilter. But you know what, on the whole you actually won't notice it as much. on your wrist. Now, the other thing for me is I'd say the crown is a bit small. The watch, as I said, is a bit of a bulky watch. The crown guards are actually quite thick, so you need a bit of a chunkier crown. My fingers aren't exceptionally large, or they're quite slim, so even I find it kind of difficult to screw it in and out and just to use the crown. So there's that. And I think the final thing on this watch is the use of the Miyota. We know the NH35s aren't expensive at all. I think it just would have benefited if they did put an NH35 movement in there. Maybe they didn't want that comparison with Seiko, but having said that, moving on to the good points now. Initially looking at it, go through the specifications and you look at the price point, this is a very, very good value for money dive watch. You've got 300 meters of water resistance, which already trumps that of the Seiko divers that you get. Now you've got a ceramic option available, which is at £220 with this current configuration, with the sapphire as well, and a very decent movement. So I think it is already in a very, very good position to, I wouldn't call it a Seiko killer, but I'd say it's a very good competitor. It's a very good entry-level dive watch, especially if you don't want to fork out that £400 or £350 for the Seikos. This at £200, £220, you can't go wrong, and this does tick the majority of the boxes actually. I would advise, if somebody wanted this, go for the stainless steel bezel, bracelet option. That's my preferred choice, and I think they look really good in the black as well, with a ceramic insert if you want. So that will put you up to £250 there already. Still, for £250 brand new, it's like a high street brand-ish, and you get it from Watch Nation, Amazon as well. So I think it's a very, very good dive watch. I do like the plunger style hands, and you can see it is diver orientated, diver focused, with the clarity of the dial. Only thing which does seem a bit odd is the date functionality. You don't usually get day and date windows on dive watches. Having said that, Seiko do put them on their turtles, etc. So yeah, overview, I think I was quite surprised, pleasantly surprised, when I did go into depth on this and look into this a lot further. So overall, very good value for money dive watch without a shadow of a doubt. Thank you once again, Craig, for sending me this over. I really enjoyed reviewing this, and hopefully I'll be able to send your watches back soon enough once I've looked at the other two as well. So hang in there, Craig. Thank you everyone for watching, and I will see you on the next review.